So I got this comment about a month ago on a video I made, and I decided instead of responding to it, it actually deserves its own video. So he says, I think it's important to refer to these people as Zionists rather than Jews of any sort. Real Jewish folk don't go in for this sort of behavior, and they don't support genocide. The real problem is Zionism. I used to call them Zionists, but I don't anymore. And it's because of the weaponization of Jewish identity and the manipulation of liberals' sympathy and pity for Jews and using liberals to advance a Jewish supremacist agenda, which is the topic of this video. Zionist Jews also manipulate conservatives to advance a Jewish supremacist agenda, but that's a video for another day. So I'm gonna direct your attention to a video, and we're gonna watch it.
It's clear that the anti-Semitism, it's clear that the world is thinking that it is the Jewish people who are conducting this this genocide, which is horrible. There's no greater, machine to generate anti-Semitism than the notion that Jews are conducting a genocide. This is awful. And
yeah, well, who's conducting it? Chinese people? Are Arabs conducting it? Are Christians conducting it? Who are conducting it other than Jews? Is it Hindus conducting the genocide? Who's conducting the genocide, Jillian Stein? Tell me.
And Israel's neighbors are extremely being mobilized against Israel. So Israel's future is very much on the line here, even more than Jewish people in general. It is the state of Israel whose neighbors are being poisoned against it right now. And you see in Jordan, for example, mass rallies who are demanding that the peace treaty be torn up between Jordan and Israel. Jordan, which is one of the most supportive neighbors. And likewise, Egypt actually threatened to dissolve its peace treaty. Your point about...
There's your anti-Zionist there. So she's anti-Zionist, right? But oh no, they're going to cut the peace treaty apart. They're going to tear it up, these two countries. Uh-oh. Well, that's what anti-Zionism is, you dumb witch. See, like even her.
I actually agree with a lot of what he said. It's actually wrong to say that these people are not Jews. Liberals are advancing a Jewish supremacist agenda, whether they realize it or not. So, liberals often castigate conservatives for stereotyping Jews, but liberals stereotype Jews as well. Liberals have been brainwashed into collectivizing Jews as innocent, victims, and oppressed. Whether liberals want to admit it or not, these are stereotypes. The problem with stereotypes is that while they might be true to a certain degree, they aren't true in an absolute sense, and they don't apply to all members of the group. By collectivizing, stereotyping Jews as innocent, victims, and oppressed, it presumes that all Jews are innocent, victims, and oppressed, even when Jews rape, murder, and commit genocide. Jill Stein is wrong. What she's doing is actually a no true Scotsman fallacy. One of the reasons why I made a video about a Jew being Secretary of the Confederacy was to dispel the myth that Jews were incessantly innocent, victims, and oppressed. But even within the body of the same Wikipedia articles about these men, they still talk about these slave-owning rapists as if they're victims just because they're Jewish. Liberals will call them Jews when they believe they are victims, but when they are guilty of bad things like rape, murder, slavery, and genocide, they will call them something else. They'll call them white, Confederates, Bolsheviks, neocons, Zionists, Israelis. They'll call them anything except Jews. But they'll call them Jews whenever they're victims. This induces the implicit bias that Jews can only ever be victims, and if these same people commit violent crimes, they immediately, and sometimes temporarily, become something else. This is the very essence of why Jews is nothing more than a transient social construct that's only leveraged when it's advantageous to Jews. And liberals have been brainwashed to advance this rhetoric to promote a Jewish supremacist agenda, even if they are unaware that they are doing so. What liberals are doing is an implicit no true Scotsman fallacy. A no true Scotsman fallacy is when you say or imply someone isn't part of your group, or in this case a Jew, just because they're doing something that you don't like. It's a fallacy. A person doesn't stop being a Jew as soon as they rape, murder, enslave black people, or commit genocide. Now, I have criticized Jewish identity being an ethnicity in the past. You can check out my video talking about that here. I'll post a link to it in the description. However, by calling Jews who commit heinous crimes literally anything except Jew implies that Jews can't ever commit heinous crimes. So while the liberal is not explicitly stating that Jews can't rape, murder, or commit genocide, they are implying and inducing the bias that they don't by never calling them Jews when they do. This propaganda only serves to further brainwash people's minds into collectivizing Jews as only ever being victims, oppressed, and innocent. Now, there's some exceptionally dumb liberals who will make bad arguments like, oh, well, not everyone committing genocide in Gaza is a Jew. I'm calling them Zionists because I'm being more accurate. Well, not everyone committing genocide in Gaza is a Zionist either, nor an Israeli for that matter. There are foreign mercenaries fighting in Gaza too. So no matter what you call them, you'll always be wrong in an absolute sense. So you're not being more correct by calling them Zionists, you're being more politically correct, in an unwitting pawn of advancing Jewish supremacy. Another bad argument that liberals make is that there are more non-Jewish Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists. These liberals are so open-minded that their brains fell out. Zionism is not a monolith, it's a spectrum. And non-Jewish Zionists are very different from Jewish Zionists. Non-Jewish Zionists can be divided up into two categories. They're typically grifters or sheep. The non-Jewish Zionists with power, influence, and a platform usually are pro-Israeli because they're being paid or pressured to do it. The rest are sheep. A Jew named Samuel Uthemeyer literally paid a drunk named C.I. Schofield to advance a Zionist agenda. C.I. Schofield invented Christian theology in order to pursue that agenda. But I'll go into depth about that in a separate video. Jews, on the other hand, have an emotional and nationalistic interaction with Israel. They are overwhelmingly supportive and loyal to Israel on an emotional and tribalistic level.
I'm constantly attacked for my Jewishness.
You know a thing or two. Do you have any advice for what we can do?
I've suggested an organization, getting 100 really good lawyers, not to let a single person get away with a single anti-Semitic act, because the police almost never prosecute. We'll sue them. We'll take away their car.
Oh, interesting, because the police won't prosecute, so you're just going to go from legal repercussions.
Take away their car, take away their apartment, bankrupt them, make them sleep on the street. I have no sympathy for an anti-Semite.
The fact of the matter is that non-Jew Zionists don't do this. Again, this is worth going into detail in a separate video, but long story short, non-Jew Zionists don't threaten, intimidate, dox, slander, or harass people who criticize Israel, Zionism, or Jews. And they definitely don't swat or blackmail people for doing those things. But Jews do. In fact, a lot of non-Jewish Zionists are actually being blackmailed, like Elon Musk. But that's a topic for another video. So in conclusion, it's wrong to talk about a group as victims when that group is currently carrying out a genocide. Jews should put their big boy pants on and take responsibility for bad behavior in their own community, instead of making excuses for why they aren't real Jews. Lying and over-exaggerating the extent to which Jews support Palestine is not taking responsibility. It's dishonest and only validates distrust of Jews and liberals who do Jewish apologetics. Jews are not above reproach. They are capable of bias, and unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of Jews are supportive of Israel and its genocide to such a high degree that knowing a person's Jewish identity is predictive of whether they support Israel. While not all Jews are Zionists, most of the ones who aren't are simply indifferent and don't care. Even among the so-called anti-Zionist Jews, a significant proportion of them still advance Zionist lies, like how white Jews come from the Middle East, like Miss Chloe. I'll post a link to that video in the description. Or worse, are actually Jewish supremacists and will blindly support Jews who rape and murder children. This guy touts himself as an anti-Zionist. He's a Jew, but he went mask off when he lambasted Bassem Youssef, who is one of the strongest supporters of Palestine and the biggest critics of the genocide going on in Gaza. And this guy threw him under the bus because he told the truth about Leo Frank. Leo Frank raped and murdered a child, and that's how the ADL was actually formed in the first place, the Anti-Defamation League. It was to defend a Jew who raped and murdered a child. And this guy is defending this Leo Frank pedophile murderer just because he's Jewish. Since the label Jew is now so heavily associated with rape, murder, and genocide, and has been weaponized to advance Jewish supremacy, I understand the dissonance that good Jews must feel about it. The truly moral and righteous Jews who genuinely denounce both Zionism and Jewish supremacy should start thinking about either renouncing their Jewish identity entirely, especially if they're atheists or part of another religion. Jewish identity is a worthless social construct at this point. Or the religious Jews should call themselves something else entirely. This is nothing new. Religions have changed their names before. Islam used to be called Mohammedanianism in the past. And in fact, religious Jews don't even call themselves Jews. That's a label that we use to refer to them. But maybe we shouldn't going forward.